Good evening, folks. Welcome along to tonight's Save Surrogacy and Stop LNP Attacks. And I suppose the big thing about this was, as we've gone forward, for a lot of people in the community, what we've seen is that we've got angry. And now's the time to stop being angry and let's get focused on how we can move forward and how we can work with the LNP and other areas within government to get what it is that we really desire. Paul Martin from Centre for Human Potential has very generously put all of this together tonight, so I'd like to firstly say thank you to him for organising that. As we move forward. So tonight we're going to be talking about the diverse family that we are as the gay and lesbian community. We're going to be talking about surrogacy in Queensland and the changes that are coming with that. We're going to go on and talk about understanding religion and politics, and then how we can work with the media so that we can garner as much support as we possibly can. And then we'll take questions from you. When Paul and I sat down and discussed how tonight should go, one of the things that we wanted to ensure was that it was a very strong and focused event. So I asked that everybody works with us from that point in time, and so we don't want people to feel unsafe at all. So our speakers tonight come from a wide variety of areas, and so that they don't feel unsafe, and so that nobody in the crowd feels unsafe, I'd ask that nobody jeers or so forth. What we're looking for is an inclusiveness, and so if we can all work towards that tonight, that would be fantastic. Can I get an agreement from the crowd that will be the way that tonight runs? Yeah. Awesome. And I suppose that means that the crowd decides when somebody might have sort of overstepped the mark at that point. Tonight, you will note that the ABC is recording. They're going live at 7 o'clock. So they'll be recording, and I know ABC Radio is here tonight as well. So please welcome, and if you don't want to be on camera, then I suppose now's the time to duck under a chair or something. From there, what I'd like to do is introduce Paul Martin. Paul's going to do the introduction as to why he felt that tonight was necessary, and explain exactly what it is that we're going forward with. So please welcome Paul Martin.
Good evening. I guess from my perspective, I just want to talk about a couple of... the microphone? Sorry. I'm standing behind these things. Okay. Can I grab it? Yeah. Oh, cool. Perfect. That's better. I feel like a drag queen now. Yeah. So from my perspective, there are two kind of major parts of my life, I think, apart from Enzo, my partner, of course, which is in terms of my professional life. And one of them is being a psychologist, and the other one has been in the area of politics and lobbying. So from my psychologist hat, what really has moved me since the LNP have kept their kind of waging this assault in our communities, which are already stigmatised and suffering, I'm hearing in our practice a lot of suffering, a lot of human suffering, and a lot of people are finding that either it reminds them of the way things used to be about 30 years ago, and all that hard-won shifts forward feel like they've all been moved straight back, and that can be very distressing. The other thing is that a lot of people feel that it's a lot of stuff from their childhood is starting to come up. I'm not going to get that deep, but just to be aware of that a lot of people have come from a background of feeling defective and socially isolated and excluded and those sorts of things. When these things happen, that comes up as well. And for me, I'm a dad was a little 8-year-old that I kind of adopted, and he's now 25, so I have my own LGBTI family without the maybe gay and lesbian family. And so I've got a real passion for this area as well. So now, moving to my other hat, which is the political hat, I've had the honour and privilege of working for 2 years with Rodney Croom, Shelley Argent, Alex Greenwich, beautiful, beautiful people. And we've spent endless hours talking over dinners after a hard day's slog in Parliament House, talking to all sorts of people, from the hardest right to the people on the very left kind of want to embrace you and make love to you, and the people on the right want to shoot you, so we've had everything in between. And from my perspective, over time, I just learned that it was never about kind of being aggressive or angry with them. It was actually sitting back and having a reflective conversation about the evidence, about a human story, about something that touches their heart. And what I noticed is that over a period of time, what happened was that these people's hearts and minds start to shift. And so that's the spirit in which we come together tonight, I think, is exactly that. We're going to have a very fast-paced night. It's going to be short, punchy talks. We've got about 11 people, I think, to get through in about an hour and a half. And we'll have time at the end to network, because the other thing we really want to do is get everybody to talk to as many people as possible, make connections. Because the more united we are, the stronger we are. So thank you so much for coming out on such a horrendously cold and wet evening. I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Speakers. And so our first of speakers tonight is Chris Pepping. Now, Chris Pepping is a psychologist with the Centre for Human Potential, and Chris is here to is a gay clinically trained psychologist working at the Centre for Human Potential. He's also a PhD candidate at Griffith University, conducts research lectures and specialises in counselling gay males. So please welcome Chris.
I guess, to start with, I'm just going to, kind of let you know what I'll be talking about, which is obviously the issue of surrogacy and same-sex parenting. And so, I think I'm going to be coming from, kind of a research perspective and talking about what the research actually says about this. So, and I think that's important because we know, that very good, parents can be heterosexual or gay, and their children can do just as well. And I think it can be really helpful to have some research kind of backing us. So, to start with, I guess one of the points, that people who, kind of don't agree with same-sex parenting kind of make is that somehow same-sex parents are less effective, or somehow it's not as ideal as like a heterosexual male and female family. And the research just doesn't support that. There's no evidence to suggest that that's the case. That there's been a lot of research over the last 20 years looking at comparing heterosexual families to gay and lesbian families, and in terms of the parenting practices, there are just no differences. There's lots of evidence that people, same-sex families are just as effective, just as caring, just as nurturing, and have just as much knowledge and skills in terms of parenting. And interestingly, there have been a few studies that have found differences between the two groups. And when those differences have occurred, it's actually been in favour of same-sex parenting. So, for example, lesbian parents sometimes, in some studies, have been shown to actually demonstrate like a closer bond with their child than heterosexual parents. So I think that's really interesting to kind of keep in mind as well. So I guess that was the first point I wanted to make, that there are no differences between gay and lesbian parents and heterosexual parents. The second point I wanted to make was about the outcomes for children, and we hear a lot about that in terms of well-being for children. And again, there's no evidence that children are worse off being raised in a same-sex family compared to heterosexual families. And there's been lots of research again done over the last 20 years and published in very good journals, academic journals. So it's not kind of like handing out little questionnaires on the street. Like, it's been kind of really well done and conducted research. And so, outcomes for children in terms of psychological health, there are no differences in terms of depression and anxiety. They're, socially have just as much friends, just as many friends, and get along with people just as well. Their social skills, children raised in same-sex families, social skills are just as good. So, psychologically, socially, they're just as well off. And, so I think that's really important to keep in mind. And the other thing is that academically, there are no differences there as well. So lots of research all kind of concludes the same thing. And again, there have been a few studies that have found differences between the two groups. between heterosexual families and kids raised with same-sex parents. And again, the differences tend to show that some studies have shown that actually children raised in same-sex families have actually done better in several outcomes than people raised in heterosexual families. So, there is just no evidence that kids are worse off. And, I think that makes logical sense. At the end of the day, what really matters for children is feeling loved, feeling wanted, and having a warm and loving environment to grow up in. And at the end of the day, that's what really counts, regardless of the sexual orientation of parents. So I think, just having a sense of the research, I have kind of tried to, cram as much of it into 5 minutes as I can. And so having a sense of the research so that, when you're talking to people, you actually have, you are aware that there's a lot of research actually backing up what we already know. So I'll leave you with that. And my understanding is that we've got like a document that we made available, great, about some of this stuff with the research there. So yes, thank you very much.
Our next speaker for tonight is David Graham. Farmer Dave grew up as one of 11 kids on a 100,000-acre cattle, sheep and grain station in southwest Queensland. And since appearing on reality TV shows such as Big Brother and Dancing with the Stars, he's become an advocate for same-sex equality and the humane treatment for animals. And tonight he's here to talk about the family unit. So please welcome Farmer Dave.
Thanks, Troy. It's a really shit night, isn't it? Like, seriously, it's wet. Michael and I just drove. We got up at 4 this morning to get some sheep to market at Warwick. And it's pissing down with rain. We had to change. Sorry about our outfits, but that's all we had in the ute. But isn't it a joke that we're even here tonight? Like, it's 2012, and here we are upsetting our lives just to try and get a little bit of equality. It just shits me to tears. But anyway, enough of that. When you work with sheep all week, you get frustrated, and I've got a lot of frustration. So I'm just going to really just verbally vomit on you about some of the thoughts that I have. And those of you that don't know, I mostly work as a dog trainer, like an animal behaviourist now. And it's kind of weird that Michael and I were so excited that we would have our civil union here in Queensland on our station. And then, of course, as a dog trainer, here I am this week, getting to the point where I actually register my relationship. The irony in that is just not lost on me every single day this week. And it's quite funny. I did a chat with Q News this week that's not going to be printed, but I was really proud of the fact that the LNP were going to ignore their fundamentalist element and live up to their beliefs. And their core belief, of course, of the LNP, the party that I joined back when I was 16, half a lifetime ago, was that the family is the basic building block of our society. And to have a party that now goes against that and is actually tearing apart families, like, this is what we all need to accept, is that families are what we are. And here we are, the party that stands for families, actually trying to destabilise it. Like, how that can't be lost on the liberal part of that big party, the LNP. There's a big moderate faction in there. We need to remind them that the parties that they're now, the families that they're now attacking are real families. I mean, to take away the rights of a child of surrogate mother and perhaps 2 fathers or 2 mothers or whatever the situation may be is disgraceful. Disgraceful that the Conservative Party would do that. And as a Conservative, that's why I believe in marriage equality, and yet I have a party that stands for me and yet is trying to tear that away from me and give us a registration. Shits me to tears. Anyway, I'm not going to keep rabbiting on, but I just think it's fantastic that all of you have come out, and the fact that we've got people all down here and the room is absolutely packed is brilliant. And I'm glad that Michael and I were able to drive 7 hours to be here and vent my little bit of frustration of playing in the sheep yards. But yeah, please don't give up on the fact that the LNP has a lot of people in there that, like me, believe in the family and believe in conservative values, and those conservative values are at the heart of the family and the heart of relationship registration that goes a little bit beyond just registering your dog. That's all I have to say.
Let's move on to surrogacy, because surrogacy last week became the massive issue when the government made the decision that they're going to look into changing the laws with regards to surrogacy. And so Karen Boffey, I think it is, from Surrogacy Australia. Is Karen here? Ready to go? Yep. So Karen's going to explain to us what it is with regards to surrogacy that we can that currently happens and what Surrogacy Australia offers from that point in time.
My name is Karen Bowie, and in October last year, I had the absolute privilege of giving birth to my first surrogacy bub, Bridie. I say privilege because that is exactly what it was. My husband and my 4 children will be forever grateful to have had the opportunity to be involved in something so magical, and it will always be a time that we will remember with pride. My husband was brave enough to say yes to this very unique surrogacy journey, and as a result we now have the pleasure of living with the knowledge that we helped alleviate the pain of 2 that were suffering. Our act of kindness didn't affect billions or even hundreds of people. It affected only but a handful, but the joy that these now parents are experiencing will stay with them for the rest of their lives. We have given a family a future generation. We were lucky enough to be part of giving one of the most precious gifts a human will ever have the pleasure of holding. This gift, in my opinion, is a gift that holds no social boundaries and should never be subject to inequalities. After Bridie's birth, I was then unable to let surrogacy go and found myself taking up a voluntary membership role within an organisation called Surrogacy Australia. This not-for-profit association was formed late in 2010 to represent and advocate on behalf of the growing numbers of Australian families using both commercial and altruistic surrogacy. Our inception was triggered by the lack of voice for these Australians who were simply trying to fulfil a very innate desire to have a family and were discovering that not only adoption was all but a myth, but the surrogacy laws in Australia were becoming increasingly restrictive. Our aims for Surrogacy Australia include such things as monitoring the rights, social and legal status of Australians using surrogacy overseas and locally, aid in improving the public's understanding of why families access surrogacy, and the measures taken to protect all parties. It is also our aim to provide social forums for Australians using surrogacy and their children, to provide its members with a user-friendly network to access information and support, and also to set up a central point for international research. We have over 310 Australians joined Surrogacy Australia since our inception, and this includes a mix of intended parents, existing parents through surrogacy and surrogates. Surrogacy Australia offers these members a quarterly newsletter and the opportunity to access an information-rich website with a member-only section. From a support point of view, we organise national quarterly coffee catch-ups, and a very active closed Facebook discussion forum has also been set up for its members. Other initiatives we have undertaken include conceiving a research program and organising the inaugural Surrogacy Australia conference in May of this year. The weekend of information was targeted at the needs of current and intended parents and was a huge success, attracting 13 international speakers and over 220 delegates. I mentioned earlier that Surrogacy Australia was born through a need for a voice, a collective voice for those that desire one of the most basic needs in life. With our voice, Surrogacy Australia takes the media and political advocacy roles given to us seriously, and we will continue to lobby politicians and key stakeholders in all states and territories to ensure surrogacy practice is better regulated. I was so proud to be a Queenslander when the Surrogacy Act went through in 2010. We had gone from one of the most restrictive laws on surrogacy to one of the more open and user-friendly altruistic surrogacy states. But now collectively we are forced to use our voice again. Together we will work out steps towards working forward to ensure that equality is again within the surrogacy program. I genuinely wish everyone every success in the future, and should you need any information on Surrogacy Australia, please ask. Thank you.
Now I'd like to introduce Rachel Kundi. Rachel has very proudly been a previous surrogate mother, and so we wanted to invite her along tonight so that she could tell her story as to what it was that she gets from that side of things and what she offers. Please welcome Rachel.
Good evening, everyone. I'm your everyday Queenslander, married with 3 kids. Perhaps what separates me from every other married mother of 3 is that I've been a surrogate not only once, but twice. In the past, I've been a very vocal supporter of surrogacy in Queensland. Back in 2008, when the government first looked into changing the surrogacy law, I entered my submission to the Parliamentary Committee in support of altruistic surrogacy for all, hetero, singles and gays. As a result of my submission, I had the chance to talk in front of the committee on the 2 days it convened. Needless to say that when the law was passed in 2010, I was overjoyed, especially seeing as I was due to give birth to my first surrogate son the next month. In March 2010, I gave birth to a little boy who had 2 loving parents that were neither me nor my husband. He had a mother and father who to this day dote on him and wonder at the incredible experience they went through to complete their gorgeous family. Being a surrogate was an amazingly rewarding experience, and after a few months of giving birth, it was no surprise to me when I decided that it was something that I wanted to do again. When I thought about what sort of couple I would like to help the second time around, I had no real set criteria. All I wanted was a personal couple that I could connect with, and someone whom I believed had the same life values as me, myself and my husband. When I heard through a friend of a friend of a friend about Michael and Jared's need for a surrogate, I jumped at the chance to meet them and see if we were compatible. It sounds a bit like internet dating, doesn't it? In some respects, it's very much like that. Before meeting with them, I discussed the possibility with having a child for a gay couple with my husband. We had no close friends that were gay, and although I had no hesitation being a surrogate for a same-sex couple, I didn't really know where my husband stood on the matter. His response was simple. If they can offer the same love and support we can offer our children, then he was all for it. After all, a family is a family, and love is love, regardless of demographics. When I met Michael and Jared, I was blown away by how friendly and open they were, even more so than other heterosexual couples in their position. They were trusting me, a virtual stranger, to carry their child for 9 months and trust that I would hand it over in the end. It's a huge thing to trust so blindly. It only took me a week to decide beyond a doubt that Michael and Jared would be outstanding parents and a couple that I would enjoy working with. Even though the laws were in place to support same-sex surrogacy, we decided to do a lot of the process on our own. I'm what you call a traditional surrogate. I used my own egg and did self-insemination, which is where you inseminate yourself with the use of specimen containers and syringes. It's messy, but it's very effective, as is evidenced by our situation. On our 3rd attempt, we got pregnant with twins. Michael and Jared were amazing throughout the pregnancy. They were over nearly every weekend with a fruit basket, and they spent time with our kids. And I must say, they're excellent cooks. Even babysitting them for my kids so that my husband and I could have quiet time. They attended every appointment, and I got the pleasure to witness the joy on their faces every time we had an ultrasound. Despite the pregnancy being relatively easy, the twins were born very prematurely at 27 weeks. Many parents fall apart when faced with such premature babies, but Michael and Jared took it all in their stride and impressed all the special care nurses and doctors with their vigilance and constant support for the twins while they were in intensive care. They were there to do as many of the parenting duties as they could during the time and had as many kangaroo cuddles as they were allowed. They rode the amazing highs as the boys became stronger and the devastating lows when their health took a step back. When there were times when some parents would find it impossible to cope, Michael and Jared just picked themselves up and looked forward, and I was more than reassured that the twins were in the best possible care in them and the staff at the RBH. After 10 long weeks in intensive care, the twins were sent home before their due date with a clean bill of health. To this day, over 9 months later, Michael and Jared keep in contact with the nurses that cared for their twins. And I'm confident in saying that not one of the nurses or doctors who looked after the twins would say that they were any less of a parent than anyone else they know. My family and I have formed a very firm friendship with Michael and Jared, and we catch up when we can and laugh at the twins' antics. They're very bad poster boys for premature babies, weighing in at over 9 kilos at 9 months, when they weighed only 1 kilo at birth. This is a testament to the fact that they have been very, very well loved and nurtured. The twins want for nothing, and they're loved in such an incredible way. I admit to just a little bit of envy when I received a text a few months back from Jared that stated that the twins had been up, fed, dressed, they were back in bed, the house was spotless and there was a pot roast on. And all this was before 9 a.m. Needless to say, they both get my vote for Daddy of the Year. I think it's very hard for a heterosexual person to understand what same-sex couples must feel when they don't even have the chance to try and get pregnant like other normal people. To know that the chance to have a family is so far out of their reach that it almost seems impossible. I'm so proud that I've given the chance to one gay couple to experience what parenthood is like. The thought that this right could be taken away in such a manner saddens me greatly. My greatest wish is that everyone with a driving desire to become a parent gets to experience what it's like. The World Health Organisation states that pregnancy and childbirth are a normal life experience, yet so many Queenslanders are about to be stripped of this experience. It will be a sad day in Queensland history when this happens. If anyone would like to talk to me about surrogacy later, feel free to approach me.
For many of us, I suppose there's that, when we realised that we were gay, there was that whole world that we thought we would never have children or couldn't have children because of that. And this story shows so well that we can and we can be better at it. So that's a fantastic story from that side. Coming with that comes the legal world, and there is so much that happens from that side. Stephen Page is probably, or I would think is one of the biggest experts from a legal perspective, certainly within Australia and probably throughout the world. He speaks around the world regularly on all of the dramas and all of the excitement and all of those things that go with it. So please welcome Stephen Page from Harrington Family Lawyers.
I must say it's a real privilege to be here tonight, particularly after the last two speakers. I just take, can you hear me? Yep. I just take my hat off to you, my figurative hat off to you, because I know Karen, I don't know Rachel, but to be a surrogate is one of the most amazing things, to be able to give the gift of life to people who have always wanted to have children. I've had the privilege of acting for heterosexual de facto couples, married couples, singles, both male and female, lesbian couples and gay couples all seeking to be parents. And I just want to talk briefly about what the proposed changes are, because all we have for our benefit are 2 paragraphs that the Attorney General stated to the House on Thursday night. The first thing that he said was that the government proposed, and it must be remembered this is contrary to what the Premier stated before the election, that there would be no change. The first thing he stated was that Lawrence Springborg's bill, or a version of that, will be something to be adopted by the government. Now that bill, I had the pleasure of reading it again yesterday or the day before, said very clearly, number 1, you can only go for surrogacy if you're eligible. To be eligible, you must be married or in a heterosexual de facto relationship of 2 years. Therefore, gay couples, lesbian couples and singles, and for that matter de factos for less than 2 years, miss out. Number 2, it's worse than that. Queensland alone will make sure that if you seek to proceed with surrogacy, you'll actually be committing a criminal offence punishable for up to 3 years imprisonment. Now, we're alone in putting that forward. The second thing that he talked about, which hasn't been talked about yet, has been one of the changes under the Surrogacy Act, which changed the 1978 Status of Children Act, was to, for the first time, recognise lesbian co-mothers on birth certificates. That's now going to change. It's quite clear from what the attorney said that that's going to go. What I don't know is, first, whether the lesbian co-mother provision, whether that's just going to be applying from the date it goes before Parliament, and we have to assume it's going to be enacted within a day, as it was with the civil union changes, and or whether it's going to be retrospective, whether women who have now named on birth certificates are going to be removed. And I don't know the answer to that. All I've got is a paragraph that the attorney has talked about. In terms of surrogacy, this afternoon I had the pain of having clients, a gay couple, come into my office and having to say to them, look, you've got to do this all by this particular date, because if you don't, you probably have to move interstate, because otherwise you're committing a criminal offence and you will not be treated by a doctor. I couldn't give them any more specific advice because we haven't been blessed with a bill. I don't know what the law is proposed to be other than those two paragraphs. So I'm sorry that I can't give you any more information than that, but I can say it's certainly looking pretty bleak. Unlike everyone else in this room, I didn't learn of what happened through the media. I happened to be on leave, and I was, because I've got nothing better to do with my time, visiting other lawyers. I was on the other side of the Pacific in Los Angeles, when twice in one day I had surrogacy lawyers say to me, what's going on in Queensland? And the first one I said, well, you know, civil unions, it's all happening. No, we don't want to talk about that. We want to talk about the disgraceful act that has happened in Queensland to remove rights. That was the impact that I had that was said to me on the other side of the Pacific. So I'm happy to answer questions at the end, but I believe I'm out of time. Thank you.
Our next speaker I'm going to bring forward will be Catherine Eastoff from Rainbow Families. Rainbow Families has been doing some fantastic work with same-sex families throughout Brisbane. So please welcome Catherine to discuss that.
Hi everyone. Hopefully you will have got a piece of paper that has a bit of information about Rainbow Families. So what I was going to talk about today was a little bit of about what we do and why we formed, and also what we plan to do as a campaign to try and preserve some of the very important parenting rights we've gained in recent years. I remember February 2010 when the Surrogacy Act and the rights for same-sex women, couples came in, and my partner and I went to Parliament House every evening with our 14-month-old son and sat in the gallery. And for me, it was one of the best days of my life. You know, the MPs were lovely. An MP came and bought us a bottle of champagne after it was passed, and I just felt, you know, this is just great. And here we are about 2.5 years later. So certainly Rainbow Families Queensland came together with the idea that we were here to support all kinds of rainbow families. And by rainbow families we mean, you know, two women who have children, either you know, through fertility clinics or by other means, gay men who have children through surrogacy, gay and lesbians who may co-parent, gays and lesbians who had children through previous heterosexual relationships, transgender couples that have children. All those families are included under the Rainbow Families Queensland service, if you like. And I'd just like to kind of briefly introduce some of the people that work with me on Rainbow Families Queensland. There's Bree and Mel down here at the front, Tammy sitting there, and Suzanne and Shannon are behind us. Wave your hand. And we came together with the idea that there's not really, you know, one place where these kind of families can get support. Now, when we started it up, we thought our main goal and objectives would be about, you know, providing places for these families to meet up with each other and mutually support, perhaps have, you know, special parenting courses for our kinds of families, those sorts of things. And we didn't really see a great need to be politically active at that point in time, and so we thought it was more about our families becoming more mainstream. But obviously, recent events have changed that. So we've put together a little bit of a sort of strategy of how we're going to campaign on this, and that's on the handout. And I guess it's based on three things. The first is that the LNP have no mandate about changing these laws. The fact that Campbell Newman said before the election that he wasn't going to change surrogacy laws, you could argue that people voted based on that. And certainly, we've got a wealth of evidence from polls and various things to say that, the majority of Queensland actually support the LGBTIQ community having parenting rights. So I think that's the first message we've got to get across. And you'll see on that page some of the things we want to do to get that message across. The second message, which I think has also come from the fact that Campbell Newman said one thing, Jared Bligey said another thing, is that the LNP are divided on this issue themselves. There's quite clearly a history in the Liberal Party of a certain faction being socially liberal. And I think we've got to appeal to those people and create more of a conflict within the LNP on this issue, so that internally they may have more of an argument and debate this more. And I think the third thing we need to look at is to sort of lobby MPs who are in very vulnerable positions in terms of having very tight margins. And there's a lot of seats that were, especially in urban Brisbane, which were very closely won by LNP. And in a lot of cases, they are also MPs that have a sort of social liberal view on those things. So those, I think, are the three key things. Now, that strategy's come out from us working with the Queer Coalition, which I've got the job of talking about later on as well, which is, lots of groups trying to work together. And so we would really love to hear from people who want to help us with this strategy. I recommend you go and have a look at our website, www.rainbowfamiliesqld.org. And look for our Facebook page. We'll communicate with people with that. But what we really do need, at the moment we're being supported by, we're all parents, we all have jobs, children to look after. So, we really struggle to find the time to do this. So as many people as we can to help us with that. And also, we want to work with other groups on this. So I think that's...
A good friend of Paul Martin's is going to speak to us next about the understanding religion and politics and how that all comes together. So I'm going to have, given that he is a good friend of Paul's, I'll have Paul introduce our next speaker.
Thank you. Yeah, look, I gave up Christianity for Lent a long time ago. But if I was to ever become a Christian again, it would be because the beautiful people that I've met who are Christians, are real Christians, and their main message is that of love. Now we're dealing with a very different dynamic here in politics in Queensland now. We were dealing with the Joh Bjelke-Petersens 30 years ago. They're gone or dead or something. We're now dealing with a very big-hearted people, apparently, with big smiles who are Christians. And they're the ones, and a lot of people in the party are these Christians, Catholics and born-again Pentecostals and evangelicals and a whole range of things. I won't get caught up in the titles. And who better, and thank you so much for coming all the way up to Sydney. His church has sponsored him to do this. Beautiful man, a great friend, Mike Hercock.
Thank you. I actually feel privileged to be here tonight, simply for one reason. It is the stories in this room that Rachel has also experienced. The kindness and the purpose of love that I have met in my local community in Surrey Hills that completely changed the way that I operated as a minister. we started a church in Surrey Hills, the highest HIV/AIDS suburb in the country, with one massive obstacle. And you can imagine what it is, being next door to Mardi Gras. And that is simply that we don't feel safe with you guys. And as I sat down with person after person who told me that as a minister, the disappointment registered in a way that I can not explain, that it just changed me and a number of us, to the point where this very heterosexual kind of Kiwi bloke decided that we needed to apologise and say sorry. We marched in Mardi Gras of 2008, and that was a rather unusual experience for me. And it was real. Our apology was real. There were many clergy who stood with us across the denominations to say we need a different way forward and a different way to engage the gay and lesbian community. I'm here partly because I'm also been making our voice heard on the marriage equality issue in Canberra and providing an alternative voice. And in doing that, what we have been able to do is actually say the dominant voice that is constantly in the media, and you constantly hear about the Australian Christian lobby, is not representative of the Christian community as a whole. 53% of Christians support marriage equality. I have absolutely no doubt that if this registers in the Christian community here in Queensland what is taking place, there will be deep disappointment. The problem is, how do we get that alternative voice together? Because that is where the pressure point is for the Australian Christian lobby, let me tell you. Every time I go to Canberra, I can absolutely assure you they go after my role and my church, publicly and constantly. And the reason why they do that, and the reason why I can piss them off much more than you guys, is because I represent a message which I believe is the truth of the gospel, that he not only loves you, but he loves your human rights. It is a natural justice that comes from standing before God, that I can say, you deserve to have those rights. And what I want to encourage you to do is to speak to your Christian friends, or if you don't have any, make one and then tell them. I can assure you they will make friends with you to tell you their message. Seriously, the area that will most pressure people will be if ministers in the communities know what is taking place and how disappointing and how damaging it is. I want to only say one more thing, and that is, since I've been involved with this over the last 4 or 5 years as a local minister and just kind of doing mainly really normal church things, which probably is similar to the person working with the sheep. But I have seen some victories. We have, and I have been privileged to be a part of seeing some changes. And I was genuinely excited to see what was happening in Queensland. And I am genuinely excited when I was in Canberra last 2 days ago when the Senate inquiry came out and said, yes, we want marriage equality in this country. But I am also standing here because of the deep disappointment that must be felt in this room. And I want to just leave you this one thought. You are not your victories and your successes, and you are not your disappointments. You are good. And you are good not because the church says so, and not because the community misunderstands you in their ignorance. You are good. And you need to tap into that and show that kindness and that love that I know is there, and you will win more people like myself over and over and over again. Thank you.
What a sensational message. As we move on, there's been an organisation that has been working very hard on behalf of the community. It's a small group of people who have been working hard at this as well. They've helped to rally people together for civil union demonstrations, and then of course the Healthy Communities rally as well. And so I want to bring Catherine Eastoff back just to explain to you exactly what the Queer Collaborative have been doing, how you can be part of that as well, because it's very important that we do continue to work together. So please welcome Catherine to tell us more about the Queer Collaborative.
Hi again. I got this job because I don't think anybody else wanted to do it, so I'm basically going to read out about it because I've been attending the recent meetings, and over the years the Queer Coalition have done a lot. They lobbied a lot for the reforms in the federal legislation in 2008, and also did a lot of good work for the surrogacy law, and also lots of other things that aren't related to parenting. So, working on age of consent and trying to ban the gay panic defence, and lots of other things like that. So, if you've got a flyer, the Queer Coalition. The idea of it is that it's basically a collaboration of various lesbian and gay, transgender, LGBT groups, and all work on a volunteer basis. And I think, unfortunately, to date, the numbers of the meetings are not great. So again, it's a thing of we've got to. As a community, all work together, and the Queer Coalition, in my view, is a good place for that, for people to be to share information about what they're doing, collaborate, so that if we're going to a meeting to see ministers or MPs, that several representatives can go, and that might mean you actually get a meeting with a minister as opposed to sort of single organisations going by themselves. And I think it also helps send the message that, on some of these issues we are united, because I think politicians tend to use the fact that, you guys can't even agree amongst yourselves about these things. So I think it's a very important forum, and that Queer Coalition are going to be writing to the Premier and the Attorney General and seeking a meeting on the Surrogacy Act and their intended repeal of it. So I don't think I've got too much else to say other than to make you aware that that's there, and I know that there are people here. Jade from Equal Love's come to the meetings, and we had various people, but we need a committed group of people there who will sort of consistently come and share information from their own organisations and collaborate.
Prior to the last election, we did get civil unions passed, thanks to the ALP government, which unfortunately did lose the last election. And so Jackie Tradd tonight is the newest member of the ALP. She was the most recent person to have been voted. She's the member for South Brisbane, and Jackie's here to tell us about how we can, from a political point of view, what it is that we need to do so that we can start to work harder, I suppose, and work smarter to ensure that our message is being heard. So please welcome Jackie Tradd.
Thanks, Troy. I will use the lectern. I'll start by thanking Paul for the invitation to be here tonight. Can I also start by saying that when I was elected in the by-election on the 28th of April, it was perhaps the worst day in living memory. The wind and the rain was incredible, but I won, and I hope that's a good omen for tonight. Look, I think what's happened in the past couple of months, it's not even been a couple of months, has been incredibly unwarranted. It's been unfair, and it's been inconsistent with the community that Queensland has become in the 21st century. I cannot believe that as a first world country, in the 21st century, we are actually talking about rescinding and extinguishing rights for a group of people based on who they love. It is an anathema to me. The arguments used to justify the defunding of QUAC were just nonsensical. I said in the Parliament that based on those arguments we may as well stop funding DV services because domestic violence has been on the increase. Based on that rationale, we should stop, funding disability organisations because more and more people are being diagnosed with a disability every day. These are nonsensical arguments. They are ideological arguments. They are wrong arguments. In terms of civil unions, what we saw, I think, last Thursday night was an incredible use of people's lives as a political football. There was one person and one person alone who came out in support of the changes to the Civil Union Civil Partnerships Act in Queensland, and that was Wendy Francis from the Australian Catholic lobby. So I think that says a lot about where the community stands on these issues. In terms of surrogacy, like you, I was incredibly surprised. I remember Campbell Newman giving the commitment before the last election that these laws would not be touched. Tonight on the news on Channel 10, I don't know if anyone saw it, but he said tonight that he was mistaken, that he did not understand his party room, his members' position in relation to this issue. So I think that is such a fundamental breach of trust with the people of Queensland, and particularly one group of people in Queensland. I know there's a lot of single women out there who have contacted me and are very angry about this new election commitment being abandoned, and I just cannot, for the life of me, begin to understand how people in this room feel. I am very lucky to have 2 children of my own. I'm also very lucky to count amongst my closest friends a number of same-sex couples who are incredibly loving parents with gorgeous children, and I cannot begin to imagine what life would be like for those people without their children in their lives, or worse yet, being criminalised for pursuing the desire to have a child through an altruistic surrogacy arrangement. I don't know if anybody saw a lot of the arguments that were levelled at the people who were defending civil partnerships in Queensland last week, but one of the arguments that was repeated over and over and over again was, we have a mandate. We have a mandate to do this. We have a mandate to extinguish and rescind these rights. We have this mandate. One of the, and I think Catherine nailed it on the head when she talked about running a campaign and being targeted in that campaign, about who you target. And I think Farmer Dave was right. There is a moderate and progressive element within the LNP. Unfortunately, they are the minority, and it is incumbent on people in this room, it's incumbent on the people who decide to organise, to contact them and make sure that they understand the depth of your concerns and feelings. But also, I think what we need to do is have a strong demonstration of why there is a lack of support out in the community for this particular move by the LNP to take away these rights. And I'm suggesting tonight that we mobilise around a significant petition to lodge in the Queensland Parliament. So what we have is a petition that calls for the legislation, for the laws to remain intact in relation to altruistic surrogacy in this state. And, this group and all of my parliamentary colleagues, all of my friends will be mobilising to ensure that as many people as possible put their name to a petition. We need to have a very powerful expression of why it's important to keep these laws as they are. So I'm going to propose that generally, but it's something that I'll be moving on, and through Paul, you can assist in getting that out. But, if we don't have many voices on a public petition saying keep the laws as they are, then their arguments that they have a mandate to do this will have more weight, and we cannot let that happen. Thank you very much for your time. Organise, mobilise, and let's campaign up until the next election. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jackie.
we'll organise for all of the details of that petition to go on onto the Facebook page that all of you arrived here because of tonight, so that we can get that mobilised and out there as soon as possible and get as many signatures on that as we can. Rob Cavalucci, the LNP candidate for Brisbane Central, was also invited to speak. This has been put together at very short notice, and it was great that Jackie was able to come tonight. I have a message that came through from Rob this afternoon. Please accept my apologies in not being able to present there tonight, but as discussed, I have a function with the Premier which will keep me engaged past the time you've commenced. I will make every effort to arrive late if possible. And he asked to pass on our regards to all of the other panel guests, including Jackie Tradd, and apologise for not being here. During the election campaign as a candidate and in my maiden speech as the new member for Brisbane Central, I made a commitment to represent all people in Brisbane Central. It is a commitment I am passionate about keeping and intend to carry out through effective communication. I believe I've been completing this task to the best of my ability, and I am enjoying the new role. I've always made myself available to meet with leaders and advocates from the LGBTI community and regularly attend the vast majority of functions and events which occur within the electorate. I will continue to work closely with the LGBTI community to ensure your voices are heard in government, and I will never walk away from honouring my commitment to stand up for all groups in my electorate. The Brisbane Central community is unique in every sense of the word, but it is a community that I value very much. I will always make sure your thoughts, aspirations and concerns are put forward at the decision table. Whilst it may not always be the perfect outcome for your community, I will work closely with you to make sure an outcome is reached where the community's wishes are considered. Cheers, Rob. On that front, Rob has been making regular appearances at, I know, the functions that I host as part of the GLBN, and I'd certainly welcome you all to come along to the GLBN functions and certainly have a chat to him, or definitely make an appointment to see him personally in his office to ensure that he's getting the message 100% from you. I'd like to call forward Paul Martin again now. We've had a couple of messages from some fantastic supporters of the community, and Paul's going to read those before we move on.
I've actually got one on my phone, so we're just going to discreetly... thank you very much. Okay. So there's a few things. Obviously, Shelley Argent, no one would have heard of course. She's a wonderful woman, a good friend, and an amazing ally for our community. So she's in Iceland, which I think is a ridiculous excuse for not coming tonight. Hello. So she says, I'm overseas at the moment. I've asked Paul Martin to speak to you on my behalf. Today, all Queenslanders should be shocked at the speed the Liberal National Party have removed rights from its lesbian and gay citizens. The LNP complained about the speed and underhanded actions of the Australian Labor Party when the legislation was voted into law, but they have moved faster and more underhandedly to remove the same rights and more. This action by the LNP will raise depression and suicidal ideation. I can totally vouch for that. We've seen a lot of that in our practice, which will only cause grief to our beloved children and to us, their parents, and will benefit no person or group. Watering down the civil union partnership legislation even further is an insult, and repealing the surrogacy legislation is cruel and can only be considered a deliberate malicious act that does not have anyone's best interests at heart, including the children they claim they're protecting. The LNP's actions clearly demonstrate the federal legislation for marriage equality needs to be enacted to prevent such discrimination from happening in other states, and should governments be elected that are as right-wing as the LNP in Queensland. We need to stand united as a group and to remain focused on our end goal, which is to regain our rights to family and be seen as couples in valid relationships. It's extremely frustrating being away at this time, but I'm formulating ideas, and knowing her, she will be formulating a lot of ideas. There'll be a storm brewing when she comes back. And we'll go about challenging this hateful legislation. Don't give up, don't get angry, be focused on what we want to achieve. Work together, support each other, and it will soon be clear to the majority of Queenslanders that no one group is safe. So that was Shelley. Now, the also the wonderful, yes, I think she does deserve a round of applause. Has anyone heard of Magda Sabansky? She was trying to get a message through tonight, and it so did not work, and then she went overseas. It's like, but she did try, and in the message that she was trying to convey, it was very much about her deepest sympathies to everyone in Queensland. She understands what everyone's going through, and she will do whatever she can to do whatever is possible from her perspective and support us. I mean, she's a great supporter of marriage equality, and she's very much aware of what we're going through and sends her warmest regards. Rodney Croom, also an amazing man. He just sent a little message as well for tonight. The current attacks against the human rights of LGBTI Queenslanders have horrified fair-minded people across the nation. It's a reminder that fundamental rights are never secure and must always be defended, but don't be discouraged. The love and bravery of LGBTI Queenslanders has prevailed over terrible prejudice in the past, and I have no doubt it will prevail again. And one more. From Karen Phelps, who's obviously great. Did everyone see her on
Yes.
Talking Against the ACL? She was fantastic. Okay. Good evening to everyone. Jackie, her wife. Jackie and I know you are gathered there in Queensland tonight in response to the events that are taking place in your state since the LNP came to power. If there's one thing that politicians hate more than anything else, it's being in power. It's not being in power. The actions of the new government must be seen for what they are. A deal done with the right-wing Christian fundamentalists to secure power for the LNP after years in opposition. Just because we understand the politics does not mean we have to accept it. It makes us angry to hear that bullies are feeling that they have a new licence to damage vulnerable LGBTI people. Our message to you is this: you are not alone, and the battle is not lost. On the contrary, the religious backlash is a strong indication that after 15 years of fighting the cause for legal equality, we're getting very close to achieving true equality. Never before has there been such mainstream momentum for LGBTI equal rights. At least 65% of Australians believe in marriage equality. At least 80% believe marriage equality is inevitable. These numbers are growing. Australians are aware that the Marriage Act is an anachronistic apartheid system and must end. The federal laws in Australia will change. It's just a matter of time. As more Australians come out, more and more of our families and friends stand with us to support and strengthen our resolve. We stand with you wherever you live, whatever difficulties you are facing. We need you to be strong and resolute so that together we can maintain the momentum for social and political progress towards equality. And that's from Karen Phillips and Jackie Stryker-Phillips.
Sometimes I suppose we sit back and think that we're stuck here all by ourselves with no support, and it's fantastic to have the support that we get from people like Magda and Karen and Shelley, who aren't part of our Queensland community, but are here to support us. From there, for everything that we're wanting to do, now it's about how we work with the media. The media is what the Australian Christian lobby works so strongly with to be able to push their message. Now we have to do that ourselves too. To enable us to have a better understanding of the media and how to work with the media, tonight we welcome Suzanne Michaels. She's a publicist and PR professional, so please put your hands together for Suzanne.
Kind of at late notice this afternoon just to get up here and talk to you a little bit about how the media works. Because we're on kind of a tight time frame, if you want to talk to me specifically later about writing media alerts or media releases or the actual how-to, just to pull me aside and I'd be happy to talk about it. But just to explain how the media works, the media relies on advertising spend. They get advertising spend through readership. Readership they get from really interesting stories. There's a couple of things that make really interesting stories. The villain, at the moment that's the state government. The victim, which at the moment is us. At the moment the media in Brisbane and in Queensland are on our side. we did an interview with Fran Whiting a few months ago, and she said to us that, look, I'm not going to write this article. I want to use your words exactly as you say them because this is your story and it needs to be told. So that was really great, and we've been getting some really, really positive support from the media in Brisbane, and we hope that that continues. But the one thing that the media loves above both of those things is a dickhead. Well, they've got a few, and unfortunately, Wendy Francis got into the media this week because people from the gay community had sent her penises and left vile messages on her mobile phone. We don't know who they came from, obviously, but it does make us look, a bit ridiculous. And so all I say is just keep that in mind. Think about what you say before you say it. Think whether or not that's actually going to have a positive influence. And if you want to talk to one of us at Rainbow Families or someone at the Queer Coalition, or even just send me a Facebook message before you decide to say something, then please do. But also, the best thing you can do to get into the media is actually just to respond to journalists. So if they write a story, every journalist loves to do a follow-up story. So send them an email, say, I really like what you said, I really hated what you said, I have something that might add value to that story, come and have a talk to me. And they will usually respond to that. So that's it. If anyone has any questions, just come chat to me later.
I think that's a really good point, is that, and I read an article earlier this week as well that said that as soon as we start to do negative things, the Australian Christian lobby will automatically lie over, and they're going to start to tell us that, or tell the community how hard done by they are because us gays are out there victimising them, despite the fact that that's what they've done to us for so long. So it's very important that we do take that approach of being very professional, I suppose, when we're responding to those things. So thank you for that, Suzanne. What I'd like to do is bring forward some of our speakers before we close the night and thank some people. So if our speakers could just come forward. I'd like to invite questions. Just a couple of rules, I suppose, from the question side. One of them is that it'd be great if we could keep the questions to less than 30 seconds. And for the speakers who would speak, if we can keep those to less than, our responses to less than a minute, because through that will mean that we can get through as many questions that people will have as possible. So, who's got the first question? And I'll get whoever's got a question just to come to the front so that we can, so that everyone can hear them. Does anyone have a question?
James Henry, Old Queen. Been here before. One of the things I have noticed is that the Christian lobby group this time... Can't hear you! Sorry. As far as it goes. I'll try and be as fast as I can. The Christian lobby group that I've noticed is working this time is not a bunch of ignorant people that actually know what they're doing. And it seems to be all up and down the eastern coastline. I was noticing the Rock Oak shop thing the other day. There's a lot of them that are being lobbied against. So New South Wales is not finished as well. They're going to cop it. And this group's moving. So they're a minority, but they're loud. And as Queens, we're louder. We've got Mardi Gras. So that's all I've got. It's more of a statement than a question, so I'm wanting to add to it.
Actually, yeah, that'd be great, Jackie, if you could respond to that.
I think you're absolutely right. They are a small group. They do know how to campaign and they do know how to mobilise. I don't know if anyone's seen the new ad that they've put together. It's on social media against any changes to the Federal Marriage Act. So they're obviously mobilising in response to the Senate inquiry report that came out, the parliamentary inquiry report that came out just last week. The issue, and also during the state election campaign, I will just put this out there as well, they put out a range of leaflets in marginal seats where they do have, where there is a big, church-going community that talked about that Labor member having passed laws that deny children a male and female parentage, so in support of surrogacy, of altruistic surrogacy. They do have money, they do know how to campaign and they do know how to mobilise. So anything that the gay and lesbian, transgender, bisexual community needs to do is to actually learn how to campaign a bit from them.
I'd like to ask Mike to speak to this as well, obviously, given that he probably understands them better than most of us. So, Mike.
Just purely on a pressure point level, it's actually very difficult, other than obviously direct opposition, which can be polarising to some degree in the argument. How then do we put pressure back on the Australian Christian lobby, for example, because they seem to obviously be able to get their message across. And their pressure points are really local churches. How they have dominated the space or their voice is because other ministers have not had any space. And then when someone does pop up, they do a very good job at kind of criticising. Now, how I suggest you could really put pressure on them is just simple letters to local pastors, because they don't understand how damaging what they're doing is. And like as recently as 2 days ago, I was sitting with MPs who are deeply concerned at the fear-mongering that they create, and they are concerned as Christian MPs, for want of a better term, not because they're particularly going to change their position, but because they know the damage that's being done. And so if you just get any messages out to local ministers to put pressure back on them, that does hurt them. And the second area are, and I won't name them, but they are financed well by particular franchises. There's no doubt about that. And that is about money.
Thanks, Mike. There was an interesting, and from that point, I just want to say that Deej Hancock, the president of Pride, posted on a number of places throughout on Facebook over the last week about how we should be supporting those who support us. And if somebody chooses not to support us through funding the Australian Christian lobby, then now's the time for us to stop supporting those businesses. Let's support the businesses who do support us. So quite literally, if you know that there are a range of companies, and it's starting to become more and more, and I know the Gloria Jeans campaign was out there quite strongly. So let's stop supporting such organisations and only support those organisations that will support us back. I know from my own world with the GLBN that we've got lots of businesses out there that are more than willing to take your money. They're more than willing to take your custom, and they are supporting our community. So please make sure that we're supporting those. Next question.
Just a quick question for you. I'm new to Brisbane. I moved here in February with the unfortunate pretense that this was a very progressive state, and I'm packing again and I want to go back home to Perth, but of all places. But my question is, what is the GLBN and how can we get involved? Because I keep hearing all these acronyms and I'm just trying to catch up.
Awesome.
With them, so.
I'll go through the GLBN in a few minutes because I want to do a plug, shameless plug in a few minutes. So, yep, cool.
Hi, and apologies if this was already covered by previous speakers, but I just wanted to, I guess there's a couple of people I'd like to direct this 2 or 3 part question to, but feel free, anyone else, the panel, to answer the Minister there and Jackie, but others, Stephen possibly. I'm interested to ask what sort of, in terms of, power analysis that then informs who we should be connecting with to garner support and what sort of support that might look like. I'm thinking, what possibilities, do we have ideas, is it in train already, connecting for advice, information and support from the likes of Amnesty International, and also what UN bodies there might be that we can be taking those sorts of actions to support, because if we want to counter the Australian Christian lobby, which has a great deal of power, then we need to be informed and garner good support and information from that sort of level, I believe. On another point, speaking of the links with churches and pastors and so forth, there are well-respected, quite large NGOs such as World Vision, and Tim Costello is the head of that, who obviously has very strong connections. So, sensible, high-profile people like that, what can be done to, behind the scenes most likely, but garner again information and support to assist us.
I might start with Mike on that one.
I think that's a great point. In Canberra, what was really effective from where we were was that I was a minister, clergy was sitting next to members of the marriage equality doctors group, next to the psychologists. There's another group here, but I won't mention it. But so what I suggest is, and the medicine one is just was so powerful. Like, you're sitting next to a doctor who's saying you will live longer, you will have less disease. It's embarrassing, frankly. And MPs get that. So I don't know where your professional area is, but those little groups are particularly powerful. And guys like Tim are a good example, actually, Tim Costello and World Vision. Let them know. It's all very well to talk about everyone else's backyard, but we've got some work in our own backyard we've got to be doing.
Jackie.
I guess the only thing I'd really add is in terms of a large organisation, I guess auspicing some of the campaigning techniques. I know that Get Up would probably be receptive, and they have been very good at mobilising or fundraising for particular ad spots. So, taking on board what Paul said earlier about really telling the human side of it. That's, I think, the way that we can mobilise the community. I don't think we need to push the community into a particular way of thinking. I think they support generally the concept of not only marriage equality, but that gay and lesbian couples can have very loving, very stable families and raise kids in that environment. So I think that we need to convey that story in order to mobilise the community, and that can be done if we can get a large organisation like Get Up auspicing some fundraising and campaigning in that respect.
I'll get Stephen and then I'll get Suzanne to speak, because obviously from that point it's getting that PR machine happening with those organisations that we need to start to work towards that.
The Queensland Law Society is certainly in support opposing the changes. Yep. The Australian Lawyers for Human Rights are also opposing the changes. I still haven't got it close enough. There we go, got it closer now. But I just want to emphasise the time frame. As I said before, we're looking at the 10th of July. We should be assuming that's Tuesday week, when this bill could be coming before Parliament, when this government will guillotine it through the Parliament at short notice. We've got to be active now. We can't wait for action. We've really got to take action as soon as we leave here. What are each and every one of us going to do to change this?
Cool.
So most people know my role in trying to change things, and that is putting my life out there. Everyone in this room can do that every single night of the week. A lot of people can't sleep, so they listen to Talkback Radio. Every single one of you has a phone, I'm sure, or access to a phone. You can get on there. I do Talkback Radio at least 3 times a week. That's because most people who listen to Talkback Radio are right-wing, and they probably haven't met a gay person or a surrogate mother or someone who has a wife who's also a female. So get on the wireless and be speaking to people, and that's how you can make a difference in this 10-day period or whatever we've got. Every single one of you can do that, and also those letters to the editor, they all make a difference. But don't think about what someone else can do, think about what you can do, and you can all do that on your phone, you can do that on email. And if you're one of those people that actually Facebook someone outside of your circle of friends. Don't get angry amongst your own little group. Get angry on those Christian groups or somewhere else, so that they're actually hearing what you have to say from your life experience, not just your, look at you, you're nasty to me. You've got to go, well, look at me, I'm normal, I'm not that bad, and I'm not going to hurt you. That's a much better way of getting the way that you want, getting the outcome that we want.
It was interesting to see how quickly Gloria Jeans closed their Facebook page from comments after a few people started to comment on what they wanted. So, and that's a very good point, that's what we need to be doing. But we need to be professional about what we're doing. We can't look like a pack of tossers who are out there just, throwing penises everywhere. As such. Suzanne.
Yeah, so as I was kind of saying before, be really honest and tell your story. And not just to the Courier Mail. Talk to your local newspaper, talk to your Quest, talk to your tiny little ones. They don't rely, they rely on, your local sporting groups and that sort of thing to survive. I'm involved in the local sporting group where I am. They support Shan and I. I know a lot of them are LNP voters, but they absolutely hate what's going on at the moment. I've got those people contacting us saying, what can we do? So what we're doing in our area, we're getting together with our entire family. We're all going to write letters. We're going to send it to our local member, and I'll be getting my friends in the area to do the same, and also sending copies of those to our local Quest paper. Definitely get online as well. Write in the comment boxes. Answer all the polls. As I put something up on the Rainbow Families website, if the government is not going to communicate with us, then they have to listen to the media, because the media is the one that's going to tear them down and put them in their place. So make sure you do get online and answer as many polls as you can, and get your friends to do the same, so that we can show them that they don't have the support to do these things.
Before you go, what should people be talking about on Talkback Radio? Because Talkback Radio, there's thousands of hours that we've got between now, hundreds of hours between now and the 10th of July. What are the things that we should be talking about?
Definitely talk about you. Talk about your situation. You can say, the Surrogacy Act, and you say, okay, well, what does that mean for me? For me, we have a 9-week-old daughter who was born through assisted reproductive technology, through IVF. I'm currently the second parent on her birth certificate. If these laws are changed, that means that despite the fact that we have a child together and I'm working to take care of her and we get up to her at night, that I will no longer be her parent. I actually wrote to Fran Whiting and expressed my frustrations about that, and she was absolutely disgusted. So just not just saying to them, look, I'm really angry, but actually going, look, this is why I'm angry. This is how it's going to impact me on my day-to-day. Just be really honest. And if you can, try and control your anger. You end up saying things that you don't mean. You end up saying really silly things that will then get replayed and replayed and replayed, and then taken out of context. So I think that's it.
Really important, I suppose, from a presentation point of view. One of the things that I'd like to recommend to all of the people when I train that is that read through it, practice it, quite a few times on what you want to say, and then get rid of the piece of paper, or just keep a couple of the points on a piece of paper that you want to talk about, so you can stay on track, and so that you don't sound like you're just reading what you've got there. But practice first. So you can spend 40 minutes reading through it over and over again, and then when you get online, say what you've got to say. Any other questions there? Yep. Come on through. You get a metre or so.
I guess just following on from what Suzanne said then, one of my friends asked me, so what might some of the implications be to families who have gone through surrogacy in Queensland? So what are some of the rights that they face losing? And as a part B, how does some of the interstate schemes work?
Okay.
Thank you.
That sounds like a question.
It does sound like it's a question for you.
The first thing when I was asked, I'm getting up close enough. Thanks, Troy.
Pretend Lady Gaga.
Pretend I'm Lady Gaga. Yeah, okay. I haven't got a meat dress on. I don't know what's proposed. We don't have a bill. All we've got is 2 paragraphs stated by the attorney. And what he said very clearly was, we're going to adopt what Lawrence Springborg put forward. So I don't know whether it's going to be retrospective. I presume it's not going to be, but I just don't know. But what is clear from the changes to the Surrogacy Act that are proposed are that if you don't fit within the camp, then it's a criminal act for which you could be jailed up to 3 years. And just so we're clear, and just so I didn't say it before, that it's in clear breach of Australia's human rights obligations. It's also in breach of the Sex Discrimination Act, which is federal legislation, because if you go to your doctor and say, I want treatment for this, and the doctor says, well, I can't give you treatment because it means I'm going to go to jail, then the next thing that you can do, and obviously I don't recommend anyone do this unless you've got no choice, but you can then take your doctor or the Queensland government to the Supreme Court or the Federal Court to have a declaration that the Queensland legislation is in breach of the Federal Sex Discrimination Act. It is absolutely beyond me why we would have legislation in this state that is going to be ruled invalid, nevertheless going through the House. The second issue about lesbian co-mothers, I don't know whether that's going to be retrospective. I just don't know. When the legislation was passed on 1 June 2010 to give recognition, it was retrospective because it was saying we don't care when the kids were born, we're going to make sure that you're recognised. I just don't know whether this government is saying, well, we're going to wind back. Yes, madam, your name might be on the birth certificate, but we're actually taking it off. I don't know whether that's proposed. Oh, interstate. New South Wales doesn't discriminate. Victoria doesn't discriminate. Tasmania currently bans surrogacy, but they're reviewing their laws. South Australia, you've got to be married or in a heterosexual de facto relationship. The Northern Territory has no laws about surrogacy whatsoever. The ACT, it doesn't matter your gender or your sexuality, but you've got to be a couple. And WA, you've got to be married in a heterosexual de facto relationship or a single female. If you're a single male or gay or lesbian, you miss out. But in none of those states, none of them, not one, is it proposed to criminalise a particular class of people, namely singles, gay and lesbian couples, or those in a heterosexual de facto relationship under 2 years for the idea of undertaking surrogacy.
Okay, I think there was a question here.
Yeah. I guess it's just to follow on now for Stephen. We have at Rainbow Families Queensland a lot of people contacting us, mostly about the birth certificate issue, but also about whether we expect that there might be changes to legislation about access to fertility treatment. And there are lots of couples who have gone through fertility treatment and have frozen embryos or sperm that they have on hold for them. And they're asking a lot of questions about what can they expect would happen there, what are their rights. Can you have a go at answering that for us?
I think one of the bizarre things, have I got it close enough this time? I'm just going to ask, I keep screwing it up. A story of my life. I think one of the bizarre things about the proposal to remove women from birth certificates is that in joy they can't be named. They can't be recognised as a parent. But in pain they can be. And you say, well, Stephen, what on earth are you talking about? And that is, if the couple split up, guess what? She's a parent under the Family Law Act and she's going to have to pay child support. But the other part of it is in dealing with that presumption under the Child Support Assessment Act, the Child Support Agency, which is an agency best known to itself, makes it pretty difficult to get through that procedure with child support. So if your name is on the birth certificate, it's a lot easier to squeeze child support out of you. In terms of fertility treatment, look, the answers I don't know. I don't, this came completely out of the blue. We were told 10:20 at night. We were told very clearly there will be no change. So who knows what's going to come out? And I think for women who are going through this process, or for people intending to undertake surrogacy, it's a real worry. It's a real worry, and we won't know until the bill's presented, and that'll probably be at 8 o'clock at night, the night before the thing gets enacted at some ungodly hour of the morning.
Okay, any other questions? Come on through, come on up.
You're close. You have to be here.
Hi, I'm Jess Payne from Equal Love. I just had a broad question, I guess, for the panel, and just wanted to say I think some people in this room perhaps came along to the demonstration that we had at the end of May, which saw 2,000 people come out on the street against the LNP's still then proposals to remove civil unions and the announcement of defunding of healthy communities. And I think it's very significant that we actually contacted the Lesbian Gay Archives, and that demonstration against the LNP was the largest LGBTI rights demonstration in Queensland's history, which I think is very significant and puts us in good stead that people's response to the LNP's attacks, which seem to be coming on a weekly basis, is that people want to fight. It's kind of, the fight or flee kind of responses, or people seem to want to fight. And it's happening in the context of a momentum generally nationally around, the acceptance and the push for full equality. And so I guess I wanted to get people's thoughts on that in terms of, the attacks that are coming in the context of full marriage equality and what they mean, but also, the significance of the fact that we have seen so many people, come out, who are angry. I'm angry. I can't help not being angry. Living in a state where we, for a long time it seemed that marriage equality was going to be inevitable, and now we're, living through a period where it's attack after attack, and the kind of homophobia that we thought was relegated to the years of the 50s or the Joe years being promoted very explicitly today. So I just wanted to get the panel's general sentiments on that.
I think, and Karen Phelps, I think, said it best earlier, that 80% of the population believe that we are going to get marriage equality, but we are going to have to go through these tough times first. And I suppose the question there is, how are we going to mobilise ourselves without being seen to be the bastard angry and be the great angry that gets us support? Let's go this way first.
Well, the first thing, I guess on the Rainbow Families page we sent out, we've got some suggestions of things that you can do, very practical things, some things that won't take very long to do. But each and every one of us have got to do something, whether that's write to your MP, let them know how you feel. As Dave said, we've just let people know. And if you are religious, talk to your churches about it and try to get that support. Certainly I went to see Carl Judge, who's my local MP. It wasn't a particularly useful meeting, he didn't really say much, but one thing he did say at the end was, in some sense, make friends with the church. And so that probably is, now that I've heard that a few times, that is probably useful advice.
Just so you all know, and I know Kat kind of said it before, but Rainbow Families Queensland is willing to take the lead on making a lot of these arguments, because pretty much every one of these attacks by the LNP is directed towards families, whether you're a single person in the family or you're wanting to have children. So we will be taking a much more aggressive and public stance on everything that's happening. So we'd appreciate everyone's support. What we'll be doing is actually running a lot of surveys on the website and on the Facebook page. We want to get numbers. There's one thing the media loves, it's dollar figures and statistics. So if we can get solid stats on how many people this is affecting, how many people's with families, what those families look like, what it means for you, then we can use all of that to counterattack.
I actually want to ask Jackie a question here, because for so many of us, we haven't actually gone to our MP. None of us have had a meeting with an MP, and we don't know what we should do. So how do we go about, firstly, getting a meeting with our MP, and what should we be telling these MPs? Because most of us have an LNP MP nowadays, so what should we be saying?
Well, in terms of accessing the details for your local MP, all you have to do is type in Queensland Parliament in the Google search drive, and it'll come up with the homepage. You click on member, and it'll have a list of all the members and their electorates and their contact details there. So it's really simple. If you're unsure whose electorate you're in, then I'm very happy for anyone to contact my office. We can do a bit of a search for you, and we can contact you up with your local MP. I think in the first instance, make a time to go see your MP. I think you have to underscore the urgency of it, because you're unsure when these proposed changes are going to be deliberated in the House, in the Queensland Parliament. So make sure you underscore how urgent it is that you meet with your MP. If they say they're meeting in Parliament, say that's fine, I'm happy to come into the House and meet with them there. I think you need to set out quite deliberately what your objections are, what your concerns are, what your objections are, and ask them for their personal position. Ask them if they are prepared to stand up in the party room and support your position. What position are they going to take in the party room at the end of the day? That is incredibly important, because whatever happens on the floor of the House will have already been determined in the LNP party room, which has 78 members, over 80% of the Queensland Parliament. You need to know that your local LNP member, if you do have a local LNP member, is prepared to stand up for you in the party room. I just want to, on that last point, I think something that people really need to appreciate, and it goes back to not only the LNP win in March this year, but also the Labor win in 2009 and 2006. For 9 years now, for 6 years now, the LNP have really struggled to win an election in this state, and they did on the 24th of March. But there was a lot of pent-up frustration from Queensland voters wanting change. But they couldn't invest that change in the LNP because they did not think the LNP represented the modern, confident, progressive state that Queensland had become. Now, Campbell Newman got them across the line because he was a small L Liberal, he was modern, he actually articulated progressive values when he said he wouldn't change surrogacy or he supported gay marriage. He actually put it out there, and Queenslanders invested their confidence in him because they thought finally we could have change, but Queensland wouldn't go back to the Job Yockey-Peterson days. And in a matter of weeks, what we saw is cops moving in on Aborigines in Musgrave Park. We saw Queensland Healthy Communities defunded, and we've started to see the rollback in terms of gay and lesbian rights in this state. Now, almost 100 pieces of legislation have been changed over the past 20 years, and the question to ask is, where is it going to stop? Because there's a lot more that can happen, as Stephen has identified, there's a lot more that can happen that will fundamentally change your lives. And the question to ask your MP is, where will this stop?
Jackie, just do you think it's better for people to go in a group to see their MP or see them individually?
I think it's fine to go like 2 or 3. If you make it 10, they'll probably feel a little bit ambushed. I just think at all stages, keep it respectful, but be insistent. Keep it respectful, be insistent, and make it really clear that this is something that is felt deeply and widely, and more people are going to come and see them.
Awesome. Okay, next question.
Just in terms of the emotional stuff there about anger, what to do with that. First thing is be aware of your emotion. Like depression actually takes away your energy. So if you're feeling down, you don't want to get out of bed, you need to do something about that. Challenge yourself. Actually, that's one of the reasons I put out a pamphlet there with a few ideas in it. So have a look at that. Great. And the other thing is anger is an action-oriented energy. So if you're feeling angry, wait till it's not out of 10 out of 10 because you'll throttle someone, but wait till it's right down pretty, and talk to your friends. When it's down to about 3 out of 10, that's when you go in and you tell from the heart to your MP. They really are, they're humans. And when they look into the eyes of someone who's really suffering, they listen to that. So use your emotions, be aware of your emotions, and they're very powerful things.
Most of them are humans. Okay, we're going to only have 1 or 2 more questions.
My name's Chris Holden. I'm actually the Uniting Church Minister in New Farm. And I just wanted to say that you don't have to go to Sydney to find places that are safe and places where people are supported and stand with us. You find them locally here. I want to take up what Jackie said. If that's the way you approach an MP, approach your minister in exactly the same way. Go to them face to face, eye to eye, and ask them what they think and how they feel. And discover for yourself whether there is a gospel of love, whether it's a safe place or it's a place that you just simply want to shake the dust off your feet, the same as Jesus did. You'll find a safe place at New Farm. It's in Merthyr Road. Thanks.
Stephen, if we're expecting the marriage equality bill to pass at some stage in the next year or 2 years, what effect will that have at the state level? Will that override any of the decisions they're making here?
Not on surrogacy. Nicola Roxon has announced last week she's asked the Family Law Council, which is a statutory body, to report on changes to the Family Law Act concerning surrogacy and how the Family Law Act interacts with state legislation. So she hasn't asked for changes to state legislation, but she has asked for changes to what changes there ought to be with Commonwealth legislation. But she's asked them not to report until next year. So there's something in the pipeline. Given the electoral cycle, it may not happen until after the next election, which isn't a good sign.
Probably screwed with that one too. Okay, come on up. Last question.
Hi, it's Jay from Equal Love. I really support the Queer Coalition and think it's such a great idea that lots of different community groups come together just so we're all on the same page. I think working together, we're stronger together. I'm just wondering how more people can find out more information about this group and when's the next meetings and that. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure that we've scheduled another meeting, but the best place to find out what's going on is their Facebook page, which is Think Queer. It started off as sort of election watch Facebook page, but now it's just Think Queer is the Queer Coalition. There is also a mailing list, which is a Yahoo group, which is Queer Coalition Queensland. Queer Coalition QLD, all one word. So if you subscribe to that mailing list, you'll get to find out when the meetings are and what other discussion is going on in terms of seeking meetings with ministers, for example. And also, just to put another plug in for Rainbow Families, we'll also sort of be cross-posting with the Queer Coalition.
We'll get those guys to put a link on the Facebook page so that you could join those directly from the Facebook page. You guys got that on originally. I'd like to say thank you to all of our speakers tonight because it's been fantastic. So starting with Chris, obviously, going through with David, Catherine, Karen, Rachel, Stephen, Mike coming all the way from Sydney, that's fantastic. Jackie, and of course Suzanne. These guys are going to be hanging around, so please ask them all of the questions that you possibly can because it's fantastic that we've got them here. Our concern, I suppose, and one of the reasons for bringing this forward is that as soon as we start to get attacked, and I suppose attack's probably a very strong word, but we have been attacked from the LNP. Some people come up with all sorts of feelings, and it does bring up those harsh feelings. And we know that suicide increases at times like this, and that's a massive concern for every single one of us on the stage, and probably for most of you or all of you sitting out there. We've put together Paul and the team at Centre for Human Potential have put together a quick sheet here for everyone, which we'll hand out as people leave, which is what to do when you're worried when someone might self-harm. So who it is that you should be turning to and what you can do from that point of view. And there's also another pamphlet there on what the Centre for Human Potential can help you with from that point of view, and who they, for some people, and for those who can't afford the help from a private psychology area, they can provide guidance on who to go to for free or low cost from that side. So it's very important from that point of view that we hold together as a community and we don't have suicides. We don't want to lose people because that'd be the harshest thing that can possibly happen from this. There's also a copy of the Surrogacy Act there. So I think that's really important from that side. I'm going to put in a couple of shameless plugs. I know that this Saturday, the Brisbane Pride Festival have a fantastic coming together for all of us. In the past, we've had big marches in June, but this year in June, because Pride Festival's been moved to September, we're going to be planting a garden in memory of those who have gone before us and those who fought hard for us. It's going to be at the Mount Cootha Botanical Gardens. We get 2 amazing gardens there. I think we're getting a pink garden and a rainbow flag, and everyone's being invited along to come and plant a seed. So please come and join the Brisbane Pride Festival in doing that. And I'm hoping Deej will yell out what time it is, because I've forgotten. Starts at 10:30. So come along. I think they're asking for people to bring trowels if they've got them. So please, trowels, yeah, not trolls. There'll be a few of those there too.
They've changed that. They want old kitchen knives because they're such small seedlings.
Right, okay, small kitchen knives. So maybe head off to IKEA and buy some. On the other side, I'm going to put in the shameless plug for the Gay and Lesbian Business Network. Now, the Gay and Lesbian Business Network, or the GLBN, supports businesses, and we're there to share around, I suppose, the joys that go with being in business and being a business professional, because it's not necessarily for all of us. Most of us in the room probably don't own our own business, but we are professionals, and we like to network within the groups. In May, the group shared around over $115,000 worth of business amongst the businesses that were in the room. Now, that's a fantastic thing for us to be sharing the business around businesses that actually want to support us. So it's really important from that point of view that we have people coming along to our events and people joining us. Now, this Saturday night, we've got our end of financial year cocktail party. We're pretty excited. It's the end of the financial year. We can go into a brand new one, really excited. We're supporting healthy communities with that particular event so that they can share the good work that they've been doing with all of our members as well. Now's the time to get your tickets for that event. They're a pre-sale ticket only. So you need to just go to the GLBN website, glbn.org.au. And for those people who want to join the Gay and Lesbian Business Network, please, we'd certainly welcome that. And we have a monthly event, which is normally which is always the first Friday of the month, and then we have extra events like the cocktail party. So there's my shameless plug. Paul wants to talk about an extra thing that the Australian Marriage Equality have put together. So please put your hands together for Paul, because he's done a fantastic job mobilising all of this group of people tonight. So he deserves a pat on the back.
Thank you very much. One very quick thing, a bit of a story, which was I was on the phone to a mum. I love doing work with PFLAG. They're an amazing group, and I love the mums. I was actually talking to them on Saturday. Anyway, one of the mums rang me because her son there was a suicide attempt. I didn't actually meet anybody at this stage. It was just on the phone. It was, and we ended up. He was in appropriate care in the end. What really struck me about that was I said, "Can I just have a brief chat with him?" And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, because I've been bullied for a long time, but it hasn't been that bad." But he said, since all of the stuff, he didn't really go into great detail, but all the stuff's been happening lately in Queensland, he said he was told that it's all right to be called a faggot now at school. And so that was one of the things that got me just so angry, and that's really what started this thing, is my emotional response to that kid. So if you don't feel that motivated to do it for yourself and whoever else, but do it for the kids, please. Yeah. One way you can do that, and Rodney Kroom has been so lovely, the AME people have worked tirelessly to get a web form up for us for this evening. They finally got it done. There was a bit of drama because they can only, this web form, if you click on that, and it's on the Australian Marriage Equality website. So go to the AME website, and what you do is you just click on that, and it, for some reason, it blocks you from sending that to all the MPs, which, surprise, surprise, but it will get to the Premier, it will get to the Attorney General, which is very, very important. So I also just want to mention that Healthy Communities also has a really good list of low-cost counselling on their website, which is really important. And I also just want to say a very big thank you to Troy, wherever he's gone. What an amazing facilitator. I knew that of all people, he'd be the one for tonight. And my thank you also to all the speakers. They're just absolutely beautiful people, and coming out of this bloody cold night, and same with yourselves. Thank you to my partner who's put up with me since I've been on this voyage, to my company, which has been really supportive, otherwise I don't think I could have done it, the Sporties, and there are lots of people that do so much work in the background no one ever sees. People like Martina, Phil Brown, lots of people that there's a huge list of them, but to all of those people, even if they haven't been named now, they prove such an incredible support and just mean a lot to me as well. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for all of your input, and you made it. It was very positive, and there's lots of stuff to go home with where you can actually make a difference. So thank you so much.
So now's the time to go and do that. Now's the time for you to ring the talkback radio stations. Now's the time for you to ring your MP, make the appointment so that we're in there now. Yeah, sorry, I'm a bit loud. Now's the time for you to make sure that you're getting out there and you're doing all of the things we spoke about tonight. All of the speakers will be hanging around up here so that they can take any of the questions that you want to do one-on-one. Ask them. Let's make sure that we're doing things. Share on the Facebook page is still there, so please continue to share on that, and let's work together so that we're going forward. And whilst we're angry, let's do it at a 3 out of 10 versus the 10 out of 10, and make sure that we're going strong. Okay, and definitely thanks to the sporties tonight. So have a soda water before you go home, folks, because the boys have been behind the bar. So thank you very much.